Welcome to the virtual collaboration experience, everyone. Thanks for joining this discussion topic, how to create a one-button studio. I'm Rob Moss, Regional Sales Manager for the Pacific Northwest for Wolf Vision. Joining me today in this discussion is John Palmore, a local man representative for Muckle Sales. John has been a fixture in the Pacific Northwest for over 20 years, working with end users as well as dealers to find solutions for their audiovisual and unified communication requirements. Let's jump right in. This whole concept of a one-button recording studio has been around for quite a long time. You can find many universities and corporations that have put a lot of resources, time, and money into creating an environment that an educator or a university professor can go into and record video of themselves, usually giving a short lecture, and walk away with a thumb drive or have it delivered to a network drive somewhere somewhere that they can have access to later. It's something that's been required just simply because of the way we're teaching now and the way we're communicating. This is accelerated, obviously, with what's been going on lately, and everybody would like to be able to have not just a one-button recording studio, but maybe more of a one-button production studio that's easier to use. John, what is a one-button production studio, and how do you think it differs from this older concept of a one-button recording studio?
Well, a number of things. There's been this kind of transition over the years where facilities used to have production studios, recording studios to create high-end content for either learning purposes or training purposes and that type of thing. And I almost kind of, in my mind, kind of call this one-button production studio is almost like a staffless production studio in a sense, because in the day, through the transition, there was facilities that were highly technical, required staff to actually run these facilities to do production, to do recording studios. So where we used to just have recording studios soon became kind of live event spaces, utilizing a lot of the same sophisticated equipment to either record or do live events and that type of thing. So as we embrace new ways of messaging and getting out there, especially with streaming and video conferencing, we're kind of redefining what is a production studio or even a recording studio. It's as people are not having the budgets to kind of necessarily have staffed, technical spaces. They've been looking at simplifying these spaces, yet still provide a facility to be able to record or produce for video conferencing, live streaming. So and we see it across all the markets. So we're seeing this not just in education, but we see it in house of worship, which used to not be production studios, but now they're becoming production studios. And in light of what's kind of going on with the COVID-19, then obviously there's a huge push to get online and create production studios out of their spaces that they had, and especially the smaller churches that really don't have the staff, they don't have the expertise, and they're looking for solutions to kind of transform those spaces. So kind of like the space that I'm, in this virtual space here, this is a city council chamber opportunity that came up, and this is kind of a production studio. So where they need to not only present for the city council and for those public people that are attending, now in light of things that are going on, they still need to use the space for streaming content, recording those meetings, and in a presentation type environment. So we're seeing multi-use spaces kind of become more and more prevalent rather than dedicated recording studios, dedicated production spaces, but almost any type of facility now could actually be a production studio.
So John, one of the things that seems to come up is we understand that the demand to have a place where you can produce quality video is important. That's been around for a while, but because of recent events, it seems like the question is how do we provide that kind of service in more environments and more rooms, right? So how do we make it accessible to the average educator? How does the new technology like a Cynap, like a Wolf Vision Cynap, help that, or help them do that cost effectively?
Well, I think first and foremost, which is important, is SM.
Yep. Go ahead and continue, okay. John.
Okay. Well, I think what's important is, again, getting back to the staffless approach, is that these rooms and these different types of environments need to be fairly simple, and they need to, because we don't have sophisticated users that are actually manning these facilities. So I think the important thing is to keep some continuity in spaces, from smaller spaces to larger spaces, and a user interface, but adding the ability to actually stream out live, to be able to record or be able to even video conference with just a single button push, or a minimum amount of button pushes to actually launch that by a fairly easy to use user interface is pretty important. So, and I think part of why I'm on this panel is because I was kind of raising the flag a lot with a lot of interest I was getting from house of worship dealers, from education, where they needed to quickly ramp up their distance learning capacities, or their streaming online services. And these are facilities that typically did not have. These are smaller facilities that did not have cameras. They did not have a whole lot of sophisticated equipment,
right,
and a very unsophisticated person operating that. So I think you kind of needed to look at a little different approach to this kind of single button, easy to use interface to be able to launch into a live stream, launch into recording, launch into a video conference without, a production facility, right, equipment, mixer boards, and all that type of thing, which would, basically overwhelm most people that are using those types of spaces.
So what I'm hearing you say is that they need something that's easy to use. They need something that can be scaled and rolled out from room to room very easily and cost effectively. And the Cynap, how does it help with all of the other things that were required in these more sophisticated recording studios of the past, like lighting, cameras, just other options that might be available on the Cynap, or easier to hook up, easier to integrate it? Where's the benefit there?
Well, generally these spaces have good audio. That's generally the given, that these spaces have generally nice audio already in there, especially if they're larger spaces. So that especially like on the house of worship. So they always have a nice sound system, but what they don't have is the other elements to bring in cameras, to bring in other types of feeds in those types of environments. And also with education, it's the same thing. So generally the audio hasn't been an issue, but they're needing to add the capacity to these spaces to not only just present in a normal manner, but hey, we also have to provide some distance learning. So the Cynap's pretty nice in that it has the ability to take in almost any type of sources, because it's that's just kind of where learning is and training is gone. So the ability to bring in live sources from hardline HDMI inputs, maybe to bring in wireless sources. We can kind of get into that a little bit in regards to being able to BYOD. But also be able to take in maybe streaming sources or even video conferencing sources and stuff as part of that. And the Cynap's a pretty unique tool in that it has that ability to take all those different types of inputs, whether they're cloud-based files, hardline inputs, USB camera, peripherals. We pretty much, the Cynap has the ability to take all that and then easily be able to select and present those sources. So the other nice thing is that it does have the ability to do up to 4 simultaneous images. So you could have presenter camera and you could have their content and stuff actually available as well, which is pretty nice.
So the topic of this conversation really is this whole one button concept. So ease of use. How does the Cynap lend itself to that? That sounds like a miracle. How would that work?
Well, you could certainly get to that point because, the Cynap does have the ability to do some pretty nifty kind of automated control, where if you power up the unit, you can actually have it turn on systems. But you could also run scripts and stuff basically to say, hey, just start recording once I turn you on. Maybe auto present sources like a camera or a laptop feed or something like that. So there really is some kind of neat customization that you could do. So that ability is actually there. I think the other neat thing you could do is almost even touchless beginning. So as we see LMS, like Panopto or, OpenCast, some of these distance learning library management systems and stuff that can automate the process for like classrooms and stuff, then certainly that, once the class starts, then everything pretty much is up and running. But I almost call it sometimes maybe one button at a time. So you can really kind of geek out and get into just be able to walk into a space and have it launch whatever type of application you want to do. But a lot of times, if you just keep it really pretty straightforward, you walk in, turn the system on, and it automatically starts some things, and then maybe open up a simple menu to start recording, right, to start webcasting, sure, to start streaming. All those are pretty easy to do in a little toolbar and stuff on the Cynap. So
one of the things I heard you mention that seems pretty exciting for the average presenter is that the Cynap has the ability to bring in other presenters that might be in the environment. The systems that we've used in the past, these more expensive, customized, one-button solutions that the universities have done, seem to be geared towards one person coming into the environment, giving a short presentation, kind of a canned presentation, if you will, and walking away with it on a thumb drive. That was kind of the paradigm, still is for most people. The Cynap has the ability to do more than that, where if other people wanted to join, or even a real classroom or real meeting. How does that work?
Well, I'll talk about this space a little bit that I'm showing virtually. This is actually a real project and stuff doing with the Wolf Vision Cynap. It's a city hall council chambers, but it's also it's a flex space. So this space gets used for a lot of different things. The city council, they have a lot of pretty sophisticated needs in this space. Not only are they needing to present to what audience they might have. In this case, they may not have much of an audience, or their audience has been extended to webcasting, or to people actually viewing online. So, but they, as a necessity, they also need to record in this space. So they do have a city clerk that operates the system. It was imperative for her that it be pretty simple to use, where she could come in and basically fire the system up. Everything, projectors turn on, everything basically launches itself. And then she could actually preview the content that's being shared by either guest speakers or material that's been queued up by the city council members. The other important thing for this space was the ability for the council members that are sitting there to have kind of a touch-free environment. They needed the ability to come in with their Surface tablets or their devices and actually view the content that's being shared, but also being able to manage and control it as well. So the Cynap is pretty cool, and you can fire up a quick little QR code on there. There's a couple different apps that we can actually utilize that allows them to basically manage and control the content, share content from their devices as well wirelessly, and then manage that without actually having to go and touch, a control interface somewhere. So they all have the ability to actually be able to do that. So view content, add to the content, annotate over the content if they want to, but also control that content, and then keep that on their own devices. So that's a whole nother topic of the touch-free environment. And an important feature, because we're seeing it in other opportunities as well, where people don't want a touch interface. They want the ability to come in with their own devices, control the room, launch a Zoom call, start webcasting, do all that from their own devices rather than through a user interface that then has to be cleaned and sanitized all the time.
So this of course really lends itself to this new paradigm we're in of non-touch, right? So not only does it allow the space to do the things that we've traditionally wanted it to do, it just happens to be able to be set up for a non-touch environment, which seems to be pretty powerful for the needs of the modern
Yeah.
modern meeting space.
Yeah. Yep. In this particular space, that carried on to the fact that it is a public space and is available to the public to rent and use. So after city council meetings are done, they might have user groups come in and use this space after the fact. Well, they don't necessarily want them to start webcasting or recording or have access to a lot of the control and feature sets. But they want them to be able to come in there and plug in their laptop or do their wireless presentation. And a unique feature is the vSolution Pro software management that allows them to actually store templates. So they'll actually have a public template that really simplifies the user interface and automates the process. So literally, they just need to come in, plug in their laptop, and the system's up and running. They don't have to touch anything. The system is just automatically set up for that. So they could completely repurpose the room with just loading a template in less than a minute. So it takes about 50 seconds to reload a template, completely repurpose the capabilities and the look and feel of the room to that particular group. So, and you can store bunches of different templates and stuff to play back. So that's a pretty powerful feature to be able to create templates for the specific users.
So compare that to what's been available up until now with these purpose-built one-button studios. In the past, the one-button studio was just that. That's all it could be for one person, one button for a canned presentation, whereas this solution seems so much more flexible in general.
Yeah.
And has the ability to repurpose itself so it can go from a one button solution to a more complex environment if needed or required. So that's pretty remarkable. What are the general cost differences, do you think, taking into account hardware? Because it seems like in the past we had to have a significant amount of hardware to accomplish this, right? Switchers, video processors, who knows what else, and with the Cynap, you don't need that, correct?
Yeah, that's been one of my favorite things about the Cynap and those integrators that embrace the product, and even a lot of higher education embracing the product because of its simplicity of integration, not necessarily of, it's certainly easy to use, very icon driven, very customizable, but it incorporates a lot of capacity of types of inputs for the cloud files, hard drive files, hardline inputs, USB streaming inputs, and almost the same type of outputs, right? So we can record, we can webcast, we could do web conferencing with it, and that can all be customized. But not having a lot of different pieces of hardware to do that. In the past, you'd have to have, 5 or 6, rack full of gear and all the interconnects and stuff and all the integration required to do that. And there's a lot of cost associated with that. And as far as the maintenance, and anybody that's been in the integration business knows that, when things aren't working, probably 90% of the time, it's a connection issue somewhere. So when you could eliminate a lot of connection points between devices, then you're going to up the reliability quite a bit. And reliability is a very key factor these days. People need to maximize their uptime and reliability. And I think having a solution that's can do most of what you need it to do and be able to customize it to just what you need it to do, I think is a pretty powerful solution. Yeah. So
one of the topics that comes up in a lot of the meetings I have is a product's ability for a remote monitoring, for remote maintenance and all those things. We've talked a little bit about that with the Solutions app, but there's something else about the Cynap that lends itself to that. What is that? Just its simplicity, or from your perspective?
From a remote monitoring and management perspective,
you're right.
Well, the software, the vSolution Pro software is pretty powerful. Does have an open API, so if you're looking at third-party, monitoring and management solutions, something like a Utiligy or Overture. I mean, there's quite a few, starting to kind of hit the market. That's kind of important, is being able to have an API, being able to have, feed that information into those. But the software itself is pretty powerful. We talked a little bit about being able to create templates and scale large facilities pretty quick. So if you're if you're an educational facility and you need to quickly kind of deploy and configure a number of rooms, and you can store those as templates and just cut and paste, and just load them in, and then just make a few minor changes in regards to re-IPing and that type of thing. So the other nice thing is we have a help desk. You can actually, click on the particular, Wolf Vision devices, and it's not just the Cynaps, but any Wolf Vision products attached. And then you can actually view and take control of that. So if you have a remote help desk, somebody's having a little bit of issue, can't find that one button to launch things, you can certainly have a help desk actually click on its web interface, and then actually see kind of what's going on in that space and be able to control it remotely, which is pretty powerful as well. So
it seems like, in my experience as well, that the fact that the Cynap is a purpose-built product, that solving solutions with it based on everything you've described is wonderful. But also, at the end of the day, if you have to swap out one, you've swapped out most of what can go wrong.
Yeah.
So getting products up online is as simple as having another one in an institution ready to go. And we've all already learned that getting that backed up unit to look and feel just like the one that was in that room is pretty simple based on software uploads and so on. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. And it does. I do want to stress a little bit, because even though the Cynap's a very powerful tool, it does a whole lot of things. Again, it's pretty easy and pretty straightforward to turn on and off functions and features and give it a different look and a little different feel for each of the users. It's kind of like the, where whiteboards, smart boards are really pretty popular. But then, if you've got different spaces that some have the smart boards with a different user interface and some are larger spaces, the nice thing about the Cynap is it's pretty display agnostic. It does not care what the display is. It can be smaller rooms or larger rooms.
Right.
The Cynap, there's a breadth of products from, simpler models for just BYOD or BYO, bring your own meeting applications that have the same look, the same feel. So whether it's a small space for just a few people, or if it's a very large space, the consistency of the user interface and the look and the feel and the control is there. So it's not because you're going, this is kind of where we get back to the recording studio, right? We have all these different, very purposeful rooms designed for specific things, but again, they all have a different look and feel and operate differently, hence the need for a lot of technical support services for some of these spaces. And if you have a common look and feel across all the spaces, and you're just kind of managing the capacity of the functions of those in that same unit, that's pretty powerful and stuff. It makes it kind of easy to deploy and scale and maintain consistency across a campus or an enterprise.
So it sounds like the Cynap family checks a lot of boxes when it comes to the modern integrator and certainly the modern end user who wants a one-button solution or as close to one button as possible. There's no doubt with that. But it kind of goes beyond that because it can become, with its look and feel and its ease of program being able to be programmed easier, I should say, that it can morph into something that can control and be used in all kinds of rooms, right?
Correct. So, and again, it kind of goes back to that what's nice about it is it works in a lot of these different spaces because you can kind of easily configure them for that particular space.
Right.
And whether it's a touchless or you want something that's highly sophisticated, again, like, the council chambers here, they use a lot of the functionality of the Wolf Vision Cynap, but then in the evening, it needs to be pretty simple, right? Plug in a laptop, have it display your content, and unplug it and have it, power down and that type of stuff. So that's a pretty compelling use case for those that are having to manage these systems, to have something that's pretty straightforward and configurable, and then kind of spend their time doing more productive things than just trying to keep things running and keep people trained on different types of spaces and stuff. So
we've got time to discuss one more little topic about this whole genre. The traditional one-button space in the past didn't really include the ability to go outside of that space. It was really just a canned recording environment. The Cynap has the ability to video conferencing from the product as well. Talk a little bit about that and how it might be used in this one one button recording environment?
Well, there's kind of a couple different schools of thought, and I've just been approached with a lot of different kind of applications and needs. Working with another kind of enterprise customer that really wants a touchless room. These are rooms where they want to launch. They don't want to be able to touch anything in a room. They just want to walk in, and they want to be able to share their content and stuff. But they also want a kind of a one-button launch of maybe a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or a WebRTC meeting. And in a lot of these cases, they don't want a user interface in those spaces. So how do you provide that one touch without providing a one touch? And the neat thing about the Cynap and some of its solution is that you can, with your own device, actually do that. You can have a QR code up on the screen, and it's, capture that with your camera. And now you can actually control everything from your own device into that space, as well as share that content. So you can either join meetings and do some cool things with the Cynap, but there's also, for those power users that really want to maybe host a meeting and they need the full color and the full power of their particular soft codec, then you can actually launch that as well and just share your content from your screen. And it's kind of like the bring your own meeting, which is kind of a new buzzword.
That's right.
We hear about bring your own device, but also bring your own meeting. And there's the need to actually be able to do both. So you have some people that just want to come in, easily be able to join a meeting, but you also have the need for some people that want to do a full blown, hey, I just want to use the stuff in the room and then host my, with my device and be able to do that wirelessly and control that as well. So you kind of have to address both. And I think Cynap does a great job of doing that.
Sounds like it. Well, it's time to start wrapping up. Please, all of you out there, if you have any questions, there's a couple of things you can do. One, contact us at Wolf Vision. We'd be happy to discuss this in greater detail. And thanks all for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.